Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Life Mastery Podcast Show. I'm your host, Ronnie Landis, and we have a really interesting conversation that we're about to bring to you on a very unique topic, a topic that we haven't specifically talked about in all of these years of having health conversations on virtually everything under the sun. This is a topic that we haven't actually had a podcast dedicated to, and it's a topic that I really enjoy and have studied for many years on and off in my research and my studies. And I have an individual who happens to be a world specialist on this topic. The topic is going to be on hydrogen, which is a massive topic. And we have Greg Hman, who was connected to me through another mutual friend, Micah Sky, and he connected us. In the moment you and I, Greg, connected on the phone, it just kind of was bananas. It was just like took off, and you really were expanding on so many things to do with hydrogen. And some people listening to that may be like, okay, hydrogen, you mean like the thing that's in the sun, like the noble gases and hydrogen that's in the sun, or like H2O. It's like, yeah, that's hydrogen, but it's actually a really deep topic, and one that everybody should learn about because it has everything to do with our health, advancing our health, potentially curing and healing many things, and really optimizing your well-being as a human being. And we're going to dive into that. And so, Greg, so excited to have you here. And first of all, let's talk about a little bit about your backstory, if we can. And I want you to maybe just share with everybody a little bit about why are you so passionate about hydrogen, and what is hydrogen anyways?
So first, we're talking specifically about molecular hydrogen. There are different types of hydrogen, clearly. So that's the first thing that I would clarify, which is H2. So if you have water that's H2O, H2 is molecular hydrogen, which means two parts hydrogen. That's why it's H2.
Mhm.
And oxygen is just obviously just one. That's why it's just O. But yeah, that's what we're talking about. Hydrogen is basically a gas. I would think about it a lot like oxygen. Oxygen's a gas, hydrogen is a gas. Obviously, when they come together, something beautiful happens and water is created,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
is kind of fascinating, right? Two gases that turn into water. But I think it's interesting because you clearly can't breathe in water, but you can breathe in oxygen, and you can also breathe in hydrogen. In fact, I think I'm just going to go ahead and breathe some in while we're hanging out here because it's good for me. But yeah, I mean, my backstory is just really about me being sick. I mean, it's funny how things in life just happen sometimes.
Mhm.
And what happened to me was actually just terrible. It's been a long, difficult road that kind of transformed me into what people call me the hydrogen man. In fact, if anybody wants to learn more about this, I do have a YouTube channel. It's called Uprising 144K, and I educate a lot on there for free. So it's free to subscribe. I never charge for subscriptions. I never charge for information. So the whole thing's free. And basically, I was incredibly sick. I couldn't walk. I had extreme levels of pain, which morphine and opioids did nothing for my level of pain. It was nerve pain. It was just nasty. Of course, they tried other drugs for nerve pain. It didn't work.
Mhm. Mhm.
And nerve pain, if anybody's ever experienced nerve pain, oh man, it's brutal. Like if you've ever had a toothache or bite into something cold and that pain you get, think about that 24/7. I mean, it was 24/7 for me. And it was one of the most brutal things that I've ever had to go through in my life. And it's a little embarrassing to share this, but I mean, I definitely was at a point where I wanted to take my own life because it was just that bad. It was messing with my psychology. And I don't think it's something that any of us could understand
Mhm.
unless we've been through it, kind of like a lot of things in life, experiences everything. And so, yeah, I was really sick. And of course, doctors didn't have any answers for me, and they didn't know what was going on. They did find out a few things. I mean, I had a really bad heart condition. To be honest, I had the heart condition before I even had any of these symptoms because I had the heart condition for a very long time. And it could have been potentially something I might have done to myself, as I've done some not so good things to my body when I was younger, just stupid stuff. And, but yeah, I was incredibly sick. And I did have some tumors also in my nerves. So that's also partially, potentially what was afflicting and causing the pain. But I don't think it was a whole story. But eventually, I wanted to learn about health. And there's a lot of discrepancies out there about health. Like some people are like, oh, you should only eat raw food. Some people say you should only eat fruit. Some people say
Right.
you should only eat meat.
Yep.
I mean, everybody has their opinion. The big thing with me is I tried to go after the science. Because the data helps us be able to decipher how things affect our body. Granted, there's bad science out there, because a lot of studies are obviously funded by institutions that are trying to manipulate the narrative. But I would try to look for the studies that were really good, legitimate studies. And what I actually ended up finding is that Japan literally has more data on health than like anywhere I've ever seen. They do the most interesting scientific studies. And that's where I found a study on hydrogen and how it was affecting the body. And I thought to myself, the first time I read it, I actually thought it was some type of hoax or a joke or a scam, because it was too good to be true. And when something's too good to be true, people say then it's probably not true. Well, most of the time, I would say that's correct. But once in a while, there's something that is too good to be true, and it's actually true. I mean, there are things like that. In this case, that's what it ended up being. So I was reading about hydrogen for years, by the way, because I didn't really understand it at first. I'm like, hydrogen? Like, I can't go to the corner drug store and buy some hydrogen. Like, where do I just didn't really understand it at first. I was never really a chemist or anything.
Mhm.
Ironically, I wasn't even a health guru. I was never into health, never really cared. I was young, and I just figured, everything would be fine. You know how that goes.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so that's kind of how it all got started. And eventually, I became so impressed by what I was reading, and I was in so much pain and suffering so much. My life was absolutely in shambles. And because I used to be pretty athletic, so being athletic, running and lifting and swimming and hiking and doing all these things. And when that's taken away from you, I mean, if anybody could just try to imagine not being able to walk like for 6 months straight, and I this happened to me throughout the years. So I had years of not being able to walk. I mean, we're talking not even being able to stand up and go to the bathroom. Certainly can't go grocery shopping, make food for yourself. Like you can't do anything, and it's so heartbreaking. It really is. It's soul crushing. It
Mhm.
crushes your soul, your heart, your mind, your body, and then you wonder, this is no life. Like this is no life. I couldn't work.
Mhm.
All my savings were being depleted, which I'd worked so hard to save. You know, and so I would definitely be dead had it not been for loved ones that helped me, and also hydrogen. I really don't think I'd be here if it wasn't for hydrogen. There was something clearly wrong in my body. I mean, to the point where I couldn't lift up like, like a remote control, and I couldn't switch channels on a TV. My joints hurt that bad, so it clearly caused a lot of problems. And then once I was convinced about the hydrogen, which took 3 to 4 years of reading data,
Oh,
I finally
interesting.
thought, okay, it was a long road.
What was your original reservation? Why did it take that long?
Because the data just didn't look, it looked like I said, it looked kind of like a hoax to me. It didn't look like something that was real.
Mhm.
Clearly there was no doctors or physicians who knew about it or understood it. Clearly there were, like, nobody knew about it. I mean, I remember going to YouTube thinking, okay, am I going to find something, maybe someone can help me understand, quote unquote, educate me on it. And you know what, there was nobody out there talking about it. And I had so many questions. I really did have just a massive amount of questions. So to find the answers, I literally had to go to Japan. And I didn't go there physically. I mean, I literally had to do a lot of work in order to find the answers that I was seeking. And once I started finding the answers, which took a lot of time, and excuse me for the background, they're working on the deck. I hope that's all right. Might be a little distracting for people. But anyway, when I was over there, or not over there, but I mean, when I was looking to the data from Japan, and I'd been to Japan before, but it was never for this. And it was a long time ago, way before I was sick, because I couldn't travel when I was ill. I was just trying to find, again, the answers to specific questions. And then I started thinking, you know what? Other people must want this information. And that's when I thought, I'm going to make a YouTube channel just to share what I found to save people time, because I had to put in years of time, a lot of it, a
Mhm.
lot of research. And the answers can be simple once you know the answer, of course, like, you
Right.
know, Einstein does all this research and all of a sudden he comes up with E equals MC squared. It's like, oh, look, it's easy. I'll just give it to you. It took 5 seconds. So it was one of those things. And I kind of ended up becoming what some people call, hydrogen guru, hydrogen expert. because I really discovered and uncovered a lot of things about it. And of course, a lot of other people started finding out about it, and it started coming out. But the big thing that I've seen that is a big mistake, there's a lot of misunderstandings about hydrogen. There's a lot of bad information out there about hydrogen. And then safety is a huge concern, in my opinion. But I also have potential data coming forward very soon that is going to be showing us the right ways and the wrong ways. And I've known the right way to do it for a while now, and I've been educating on it. But a lot of people just don't know how to do it right. And I am concerned for some people getting hurt, because people have gotten hurt. I've had people email me who've done it the wrong way, using devices, for example, that use lye. Sodium hydroxide is a very dangerous chemical. And some people, believe it or not, use it to make hydrogen, which is just kind of insane, in my opinion. But things like that, you really have to know what you're doing.
Okay, that's a great segue, and there's a number of things I want to talk about, particularly to help illuminate this topic for people. And I want to get into, not right away, but I do want to get into breaking down some of the potential dangers, misconceptions, some of the things that are going on in the product tech industry, and help steer people in the right direction. That's what you did for me and for Micah. You really shared with us some of these potential pitfalls in the quote unquote supplement, the molecular hydrogen supplement industry. So we definitely want to talk about that. Before we do, can you tell us what exactly are the benefits of hydrogen? As far as like as far as a health supplement or a health technology.
Well, I would say the benefits are, they're just so many.
Yeah.
I mean, I could give you some examples of things. So there, right now, in this world of science, I believe there's roughly 170 conditions that hydrogen has been shown to be effective for. And before I go on, I do want to make it clear, I'm not giving any medical advice. I'm not making any medical claims. This is just important these days to state that. But if people want to read more about the science, for example, they can go to holyhydrogen.com. They have a ton of the scientific studies that have been done. We are talking about something that has already been medically approved in Japan. So this is like something that's actually legitimate. But if I were to give you some examples, I've known people with high blood pressure, it's gone. No more pharmaceuticals needed. People with high cholesterol, people with diabetes, people with arthritis. They are currently studying it for dementia and Alzheimer's, and there does appear to be some interesting effects in regards to that. Accelerated recovery would be amazing for athletes, in my opinion. They've even used it for a word that I'm almost afraid to say on the internet because there's so much controversy, but let's just say that there's a virus going out there that starts with a C. They've actually approved it for that use in Asia. In fact, inhaling it, because hydrogen has been shown to be anti-inflammatory, which is really important because basically most diseases start with a form of inflammation. Like, for example, myocarditis. Anything that ends with itis, is a form of inflammation. So that's another thing that it's been shown to be really great for. It also does function as a very unique selective antioxidant. And I say unique because I almost wish we had a chart here.
Yeah.
Were you aware that antioxidants come in different sizes? So vitamin E is a different size, CoQ10 is a different size, vitamin C, these different antioxidants. Hydrogen is super tiny. It's so small, it can penetrate anything, including our mitochondria. And liberated of oxidative stress, or like ROS, reactive oxygen species. Oxidative stress, interestingly enough, is a form of oxygen. And even the Japanese, this was so fascinating because there's a lot of detail when it comes to hydrogen. And the Japanese are so detail oriented. I mean, just look at like their little sushi platters and just all the electronics. And they do so many interesting things in very, very detail oriented people, which I think is awesome. Well, when it comes to hydrogen, there's a lot of detail. And the tiny little hydrogen can get into anywhere, and it appears that it liberates the body of this oxidative stress. Well, I remember reading one of the studies where they just had a massive list of all these medical conditions. I mean, it's a huge list. And next to them were all the medications that were given for each particular ailment, plus medications for the side effects of the previous medication. And the list got so big, of all these pills. And then they showed hydrogen, because hydrogen had been shown to be effective against all those diseases. And the Japanese were like hypothesizing, or they were just wondering, like, how could one thing replace all this massive list of medications? They're like, how is this possible? So millions of dollars, lots of research. And what they ended up discovering is that 97% of all disease comes down to one thing: oxidative stress. If you have too much oxidative stress in your liver, now you're going to have, I don't know, cirrhosis of the liver, or some liver issue. If you have too much of it in your brain, if you have too much of it in your gallbladder, whatever, too much oxidative stress can basically result in some type of ailment. And hydrogen goes in there, and oxidative stress is a form of oxygen. And as we know, molecular hydrogen has an affinity towards oxygen. That's what creates water.
Right.
So it seems to be almost like magnetically attracted to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it neutralizes it and turns to water, and you just flush it out of the body. And it's like so beautifully simple, kind of like water. Water is simple, but yet so complex.
So complex.
So beautiful.
Yeah. There's an interest. This is so fascinating. And there's so many there's so many data points in my own mind that I've put together when it comes to hydrogen. And it's interesting that we're now having this conversation. I've been really interested in hydrogen for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, not as deep as you are into it, but it's always been something for whatever reason. For whatever reason, I've been interested in it. It's kind of like this, it's almost like, it's interesting that I would be so interested in it because it's kind of a niche, almost like random piece. But for some reason, it kind of like has drawn my attention. One of the things that you're bringing up that I've thought about, and I think we've talked about this in one of our conversations, like hydrogen is technically like a masculine, if you want to use that language, it's like a masculine molecule, where oxygen is more of like a feminine molecule. The earth is made mostly of oxygen, the sun's mostly hydrogen, and those two gaseous molecules, they have an affinity for each other, right? So they're attracted to each other. The stuff of the heavens and the earth come together and meet in the middle and have a baby and call it H2O. And
absolutely,
which is the birthing of all life, coming from water, right? Is the ennobled spiritual substance of all life. And then the piece around, a piece around oxygen, like the feminine as an energy, is an unstable force, right? So it needs a stable force. The hydrogen stabilizes the oxygen. And this is what we see when people do too much ozone, right? It's just high oxygen, 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 without the stable force of hydrogen, which keeps it in balance. I'm curious what you think about that.
Absolutely. I think you actually hit on a bunch of interesting, good points. And I've made a whole video about this, but I've never actually released it. But hydrogen actually is, in my opinion, the great stabilizer. It brings balance back to things. And the beautiful thing is, if you get too much hydrogen in your body, like I'm breathing it in right now, obviously just pure hydrogen. If I get too much, my body will just exhale it. With every exhale, I'm actually exhaling hydrogen. So, it's almost like not a really big deal. It just brings balance back to the body.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to the male and female energy, I mean, I agree with you, actually. The way that I've looked at it is actually like this, because I actually believe that I found hydrogen in ancient scriptures. I've discovered it all over the place. The stories I could tell you. I mean, I could tell you a really
This is super interesting to me because no one's ever talked about this kind of thing before.
Oh man, I got stuff even about Egypt that nobody's noticed. Like, for example, in ancient scriptures, think about this. It all starts with the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing about the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, there's a lot of things. I mean, one, if you recall by reading the scripture, where was it located? It was located in the center of the garden. Okay, which is literally where the tree of life was also. It was weird that they were both in the center of the garden. One verse will say that they didn't know where it was located later on. Another verse would say that it was in the center of the garden. So it's kind of weird that they said they didn't know where it was. It's kind of odd to me, but it clearly to me was in the center of the garden. Now, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, I have a background in translation. So when I read a book that has been translated multiple times, I look at it differently than probably most people do.
Mm-hmm.
They chose the wrong words. And I think they did it on purpose. It shouldn't be the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because I will say the exact same thing with two different words. I would call it the tree of knowledge of life and death.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good is life, death is evil, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now let's look at water, because what would be at the center of a garden? Garden of Eden. Water, a source of water, because that's what feeds the entire garden. What is water? Well, it's H2O, right? Oxygen is death. It oxidizes.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
It's literally death. In fact, in the world of science, oxygen is depicted as red.
Right. And you're
Red
always
is
you're trying to protect your fruits and vegetables in your refrigerator by sealing them up. Otherwise, they'll get oxidized.
absolutely. So you're totally right on this, right? So it's depicted as red, which ironically is the color of the devil, right?
But yeah,
Red,
that's
death,
really interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
oxidation, right? Then hydrogen is depicted as blue, and
Uh,
it's not an oxidant, it's an antioxidant.
uh-huh.
Okay, so it's life, right? And what's also depicted as blue, usually the heavenly angels and whites and blue, light blues, and you know how that all goes, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
the knowledge, to me, it's actually about the knowledge of water.
Mhm. Mhm.
This is what I really think we're touching on. And there's so much that we don't know about water. There's so much. I mean, we've learned a lot, but water. I mean, you could literally drink water from one place and die, and drink water from another place, and it brings healing properties. It's like, what in the world's going on here?
Yeah.
Water's it's amazing, and it can be a solid, it can be a liquid, it can be a gas. It's made up of two gases, even very interesting. And so there's a lot to unwrap on
Mhm.
this particular subject. And I think that the tree of knowledge of life and death is actually about the knowledge of water. That's my opinion, because water needs balance too. People can say, "Oh, we need water on this planet for survival." Oh, really? Well, I mean, although that's true, what if we just flood the whole earth? Everything dies, right? But if you take away all the water, we all die also, right? Life has always been about balance.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
always been about the narrow gate, as other scriptural verses talk about, because it's all about balance. And the great balancer is hydrogen. You know, it's the great balancer for our bodies, does just amazing things. And it is the source of all life, by the way. So that means that if you take hydrogen out of a fruit or vegetable, it's going to die. Yeah, oxidation, but also you take away hydrogen, it's dead. Same thing goes for the human body. It is the source of life itself. And if you make things like, I educate and teach on how to make hydrogen water the right way. You put that on plants, look out. Just see what it does to plants. It's unbelievable, right?
Interesting.
And I believe that in the future, have you ever heard of the age of Aquarius? People
But yeah.
talking about this.
All right. Of course.
And then some people, I hope this noise is not coming through.
No, you're good.
Um, but the age of Aquarius, I have a theory on the age of Aquarius. Some people who really understand the mystical writings will say things like, the age of Aquarius is the golden age, the golden age is coming, this kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
I actually believe that that's very true. Though I think it's a lot like what scripture says. Scripture says we're going to go through something called tribulation. We're going to go through some hard times. But I've learned from experience that going through hard times, and boy, it wasn't fun. I mean, I literally, if I talk too much about it, I'll just start crying because I'm scarred,
Mhm.
from this. And this is part of what changed me, though. I had to go through something so terrible to value the most important thing in my life, which ultimately is my health. Because without my health, I
Mhm.
can't do anything.
Mhm.
I'm no good to anybody. I'm no good to myself. I can't work. I can't walk. I can't do things to help others and be kind to others. When you're in pain, it's hard to be patient, because you're in so much pain, it takes all your energy, blah, blah, blah. Your health is so valuable.
Yeah.
I don't care if you have $10 billion, you can't make an 80-year-old be 20 again. I don't
Right.
care how much money you have.
Right.
So this is something you can't buy.
Mhm.
You know, what you can do is try to sustain your health as you're aging and do the best that you can to be able to stay healthy so that you can have a good life, hopefully, you know. And so ultimately, I think this is a very spiritual molecule. But again, the age of Aquarius, knowledge of water, my friend. It's
Mhm.
all about the
Right.
hydrogen,
Right.
is
The
what's
water
coming.
bearer. You bear the water on your back. The age of Aquarius. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it'll bring prosperity in so many ways. I think it's going to change the world of agriculture.
Mhm.
I think it's going to change the world of medicine. And I also think it's going to change the athletics is going to be another really, really big one, and just obviously health, and even beauty if you want to get a little because it's
Absolutely.
anti-aging,
Absolutely. Absolutely. What
you know.
I'm curious what you think about this. One of the things that I got into in one of my research rabbit holes many years ago was studying the ATP, mitochondrial energy, cellular energy for short, metabolic energy, right? In the world of nutrition, you have all these discrepancies, and people talk about ketosis, getting on a ketogenic type of diet. fat-based diet, like, oh no, you actually need sugar for glycolysis and sugar respiration, so you need to get on more of a carbohydrate fruit-based diet, whatever the thing is. So we produce energy primarily from either fats or carbohydrates from a food perspective, but once you start getting into fasting and you don't have caloric intake, then it's like, okay, what's actually producing energy in the body? Then you find out it's biophotons, right? Light packets of light energy coming primarily from the sun. But then you also have oxygen and hydrogen as the primary sources of original energy that run the whole like ATP cellular system. I'm curious what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's very interesting. There was so again, on my channel, on my YouTube channel, I have a lot of the videos numbered, the ones that are important, because I also like to play around sometimes and I'll just put up some random fun stuff. But I think it was video number 8. Oh, wait, no. Video number 8 was amazing, but it wasn't that one. It was like 68 or 69, one of those videos. And it was a live blood analysis.
Mm.
And
Mm.
you could see the blood just kind of just sitting there. And they had this woman, this was in a Japanese lab. She drank water, normal water. And then you could see the difference in the blood. It began to kind of move. And then they gave her hydrogen water, specifically from the device that I use, because just in Japan, they know what the best is. This is actually the number one device in Asia. Everybody knows the Japanese are just master electronics, actually masters at metal technology also, which is part of hydrogen. You got to have proper metal technology. I'm doing a video of that on that very soon. These are the things that are important to make it safe and properly. And so then the blood just begins to move like a river. And I literally had and so we're talking about energy, right? I mean, just massive amount of energy all of a sudden in your blood. Like, what happened? You know, I literally had doctors who contacted me who saw that video and told me, what you're showing there is impossible. And I was like, it's clearly possible. And then one of them just wanted me, they said, if I prove that this is a lie, will you be willing to go out there and tell people the truth? And I said, absolutely. And so they bought a machine, they took it to their own lab. They wanted to find out all the parameters of how they follow this study and this test in Japan. They did it exactly the same way. And by the time she was done, she got back to me. She goes, I cannot believe it. The results came back exactly the same. This stuff is like a miracle. I mean, it really is too good to be true. And she clearly saw that it was true. And she began to use it on her mother, who was like 90, I can't remember, 95 years old or something. She could barely stand up and walk for like 5-10 seconds. And after using the hydrogen for a few months, she could get up and walk around for like 1 or 2 hours.
Wow.
It changed her life. And that's about energy, because one thing that happens as you age is your mitochondria is not functioning the way that it once did. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And so hydrogen does penetrate the mitochondria. In fact, one of the first guys, he's not even a hydrogen specialist. He's taunted as one in the United States. He's from Japan, but he's not really a hydrogen specialist. He's actually a mitochondrial specialist. He actually kind of stumbled upon this and saw how it was affecting the mitochondria. And that's ultimately what happened. And the mitochondria, you again, relieve it of this oxidative stress, some form of damage, and it can come back and begin to do the things that it should. As you probably well know, mitochondrial issues with the mitochondria eventually but eventually change and create cancer in the body. Mm-hmm. So it's a really good thing to keep your mitochondria healthy. Hydrogen's obviously, in my opinion, a really great preventative type of medicine, if you want to call it medicine. Mm-hmm. I think it's fascinating because also it's like consuming food. Like, for example, the pitcher that I make of water, it's 1.5 liters with this 2022 Lourdes Hydrofix Premium is the name of it. That pitcher has roughly the antioxidative power of something like 15 or 1,800 apples. Now, you couldn't consume those amount of apples. Well, you could try to juice them and you could do this stuff, but that comes with sugars,
that's right,
enzymes, amino acids. I mean, it comes with good stuff, enzyme, good things. But to be able to bring in this level of special selective antioxidants without ever consuming a calorie, I mean, that is, it's unheard of. It's unheard of, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And so it's amazing for energy, basically, to answer the question simply. But hydrogen definitely plays a role in energy.
No, that was amazing. And basically the distillation of that is that if you have energy issues, then you probably have mitochondrial issues. And so hydrogen is a key component in that equation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the body at the core of it, and we're learning more all the time through science, at the core of how it all functions, hydrogen's at its core. I mean, it's incredibly important. You know, one of my theories is, you know, when people take antibiotics and it begins to like kill a bunch of good bacteria.
Yeah.
And one of my theories is that we know that a lot of these bacteria are responsible for producing hydrogen. So our body does produce hydrogen, by the way. We need it. As we age, we make less, you know. And one of the things that I noticed, I probably shouldn't talk about it yet too much, but there's actually something that I've observed that no scientist seems to have connected the dots yet. And a lot of my ideas end up getting stolen. That's why I've been told that I shouldn't be sharing them so much anymore, because they just take them from me, but I'll share with you. If you notice that as we age, we actually make less and less stomach acids. Okay, this is scientific fact.
Yep.
As we age, we also make less and less hydrogen. I believe there's actually a correlation. They're linked. And this is actually super important. And I could go into more detail because I have a lot of details about that. But ultimately, it's incredibly important for our energy and how everything functions in our body. Hydrogen is at the core, just like water. Just being properly hydrated makes your body run better. But hydrogen, it just changes the game. It's a game changer. I don't care if you're like juicing all the time or eating super healthy and all this stuff. I've known people where hydrogen just takes it to the next level. It does things that nothing else can do. It's so unique, you know. So whether you're a carnivore or a vegan, or it doesn't matter,
right?
You know, or even just a junk food eater. I mean, it's almost embarrassing because I really don't like to share this particular story, but I've known people who've had medical issues who ate very unhealthy and they wanted to get healthy, but they didn't want to change anything in their lifestyle, you know. And so one of the things that I always, you know, quote unquote suggest is, one, the cleanest water. You always want that. And you combine that with hydrogen, and the things that I've seen it do, even in the midst of somebody not being very healthy, is actually kind of unbelievable. It's hard to believe. I've seen people's, you know, again, arthritis go away, blood pressure issues go away, cholesterol issues go away, diabetes issues, people who were obese. I have a video of a woman in a wheelchair who lost something like almost 40 pounds in something between 4 to 6 months, and she changed nothing.
Wow.
The only thing that she started doing was using hydrogen, because hydrogen has been shown not only to help regulate the metabolism again, which gets all out of whack when you're overweight, by the way. And this is a scientific fact. In fact, there's new research. I don't know, this boggled my mind. When you're overweight, the body just randomly starts sending inflammatory signals to different parts of the body. And this is a big deal. The body's so confused when it's that overweight. You know, when obesity comes into the realm of science and health and what's going on. So the body gets all confused, and hydrogen seems to, again, bring it back into balance, right? The great balancer. And everything begins to get regulated, and then the people begin to drop weight, you know, and she never changed anything. I wish that she would have made other changes. Her results would have been off the charts. You know, that's the one thing about hydrogen. I don't like people to just rely on hydrogen and just clean water. It's like, no, make other changes too and enhance your life, you know. But I've seen it just on its own enhance life.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. And so hydrogen in a lot of ways rests as the foundation at the bedrock of not only human health, but life in general, sentient health, plant health, all of it, everything that's going on planet Earth is largely affected by this molecular phenomenon of hydrogen. And so, okay, so that's super foundational. With the time that we have in this particular interview, and we might end up having to do a part two, I want to get into a little bit about what you see in the industry, because we're talking about hydrogen. People are getting really interested in it. But now there's a whole issue that's going on in the industry of hydrogen supplements that people can get really confused about, or just get the wrong kind of stuff.
Absolutely. This is probably where my specialty really lies, because you can talk about hydrogen all day long, all the medical studies, how amazing it is, all this stuff. And then when you want to apply it, you could literally take lye, you know, sodium hydroxide, which is the main ingredient in Drano. You could take something like that, mix it with water, and there's going to be hydrogen that's going to come off of it but you would never want to inhale that. I mean, that's toxic,
Yeah.
right? So you have to figure out a way to make it cleanly without byproduct. This requires a certain level of engineering. I mean, you need metal technology. In fact, doing a lot of research on metals, there's only one company in the entire world that makes the special type of metal that you would need. One. I mean, that's crazy to me. I'm like, you're telling me there's only one company? It's a Japanese company. They're the only ones who saw the importance of all this. I personally stay away from products made in China. There's a bunch of these little hydrogen little bottles that are being sold out there. I actually have some lab footage from these being tested, and I'm going to be releasing that real soon. So that's going to be exciting because I've been saying it for a long time. A lot of people either didn't believe me or people wanted proof, and now I have some. So it's going to be really important to showcase that. And there's so much bad information on hydrogen out there. I mean, it's really bad. Like some people recommend taking hydrogen pills. Oh my goodness. There's going to be some new stuff that I'm releasing on this, some actual lab footage proof again, because I've been talking about it for so long, and I understand there's a lot of science involved, but a lot of engineering involved. And then bringing these two together, and technology is also involved in this whole thing. And so it's a little complicated to understand how to do it right. And of course, when it comes to companies, the problem is profits, right? So everybody's like, hey, I want to sell you pills, right? Because I don't know, they cost $3 to make and I sell them for $50, and you're going to keep on buying them, right? You're going to buy this forever, right? And I wouldn't care if they were safe, but in my opinion, they're not. And I'm going to showcase later on, why that is. So what I've ultimately learned, and I've been the only voice in this, and of course, a lot of people watch my channel when they want to know about hydrogen, and they want to watch my channel to learn, and ultimately they try to say, oh, our products are safe. Everybody, that's been a big thing because people have heard me speak, but I'm the only guy who talks about it. I'm the guy who literally brought it up, and I can talk about the unsafe factors and always bringing the best, latest information. That's the other big issue, because I use the information that comes from the #1 hospital in the world that uses hydrogen medically.
And this is in Japan.
Yeah, it's a place called Keio University. It's a university, and Keio University is the #1 in the world. And in Japan, medical centers and hospitals literally use a device that I'm using, which is interesting because hydrogen used to be more expensive, to really get clean, medical grade hydrogen. It was not cheap. The Japanese did make a device that was originally like $11,000, and it only made the hydrogen gas, but it did make it safely and properly, which is important because this is not being talked about. I don't know if you know much about ozone therapy, but back in the day, there used to be ways to apply ozone incorrectly also, and it could be dangerous. And in order to make ozone properly and cleanly, you literally need like an oxygen tank of like 99%, pure oxygen in order to do it right. But that didn't come out till later. And right now, hydrogen, I'm trying to nip it in the bud. I'm trying to say, look, guys, safety is an issue. We got to talk about this because I already have known multiple people who have been hurt by hydrogen by doing it wrong. Many people have contacted me, and I've heard the stories. And of course, it saddens me because the last thing you want is hydrogen to get a bad name.
Yeah.
If it gets a bad name, they're going to take it from us, right? And hydrogen is amazing for us. I mean, it's transformed my life. I've seen it transform my father's life. I've seen it transform a lot of people's lives. So we don't want people doing foolish things and then all of a sudden, try to get rid of it. Believe it or not, even in Japan, that happened. They don't sell the pills, by the way, in Japan. Now they're giving people warnings about these leaching metals, so they have to like give a warning now.
I see.
And it really had some issues in Japan, and then eventually they didn't even want it to be approved medically, but there was so much overwhelming data. And then basically, hydrogen is actually the purest substance known to man, by the way. It's cleaner and more pure than oxygen. So if you know anything about deep sea diving, when you're under pressure and your body can't off gas, if you go super deep, you have to actually not breathe in much oxygen, almost none actually. They switch you to hydrogen and helium, which is a form of hydrogen. And that's because of its purity and its safety. So it's literally better than oxygen. It's better than air, which is kind of crazy, right, to say, but it's amazing stuff. You just have to do it right is all.
Yeah. Well, let's probe into that a little bit more. You work with a company that has created a technology that is super user friendly, that is accessible to everybody. And then I want to talk a little bit about that, but I also want to clarify with you. So a lot of these other companies that are producing hydrogen tablets, is the main issue that they're heavy metal contaminant?
Yeah, well, okay. So I'm going to be putting out a video on that soon. But what I will tell you is that one of the big things that they like to tell you, I mean, if you read the label on this, it'll literally say something like, don't give it to a pregnant woman, don't give it to a baby.
Right.
And hydrogen's actually totally safe to give to a pregnant woman, totally safe to give to a baby if it was made properly. It's kind of like almost telling a woman, well, don't breathe. The air, you have to breathe. But hydrogen is safe if done properly, right? And they like to say, oh, these have magnesium in it. Magnesium's good for you. Well, magnesium, see, I've had to do so much research to figure this out.
No.
Magnesium is a compound metal. So there can be other stuff in here that they're potentially not telling you about. Well, to me, it's clear as day because, well, for one, when you smell this stuff, it kind of stinks. There's something not right about it. But when you put it in water, and you're going to see some lab footage coming up soon. It's very exciting. I mean, this is years in the making. So anybody who's interested, subscribe and check out my channel. You can even go to the Holy Hydrogen YouTube channel. They have some stuff too, but it's not as big as mine. But basically, the water, you'll see it turn gray. And anybody who's ever drank this stuff, it immediately tastes like metal. You're like, oh God, it tastes terrible, actually. You're just like, I'm drinking this for good health. I mean, it's craziness. And there's some other things that I want to disclose about it, but I probably should wait until the actual video comes out. But I'll just say that in my opinion, it's not a good idea to take these. I knew a group of people who took them and did blood work before and after, hoping to see all these amazing benefits. All of them, their liver numbers were worse after 6 months of usage. So this was telling me something. And Japan had already theorized this, saying, we know that doing such a thing will most likely lead to cirrhosis of the liver or some type of damage to the liver, which was something that clearly happened to these people, but also could affect dementia, Alzheimer's, because heavy metals, like you're stating, and issues in the reproductive organs, primarily females, but I'm sure it affect males also. So this is a huge issue in my opinion. But I'm going to be releasing some other data because I'm going to show you what this stuff's doing to water. And it's I don't know if I should state it here just yet. I think it'd be better for people to watch the video so you can see it for yourself. And of course, this is another big issue is supposed experts tell you that you can use these MIZ drops or other blue drops called H2 blue to measure hydrogen.
Okay.
I'm going to showcase these on the video too, because these are not accurate. They're giving completely wrong readings, which is a problem because if you're claiming a certain amount of hydrogen that is therapeutic, but it's not actually being made, the proper level. I mean, I could give you numbers if you want, or you guys could wait for the videos, but like I'll give you one example. There's bottles like this that claim 3.7, 4.0 ppm, which is parts per million of hydrogen. Well, in our atmospheric pressure, you can only dissolve 1.6. You can't go anything past that in our atmospheric pressure. If you were to put it under pressure, you could obviously do that. But the measurements that I've seen, proper lab testing, this is not proper lab testing. Anybody doing this doesn't know what they're talking about. And everybody's doing this. This is what I've been trying to educate here in the United States. This is not working. And so with the proper equipment, which is very expensive and needs a lot of calibration, they're showing that those bottles are maybe making roughly 1 ppm. So it's 1/3 to 1/4 of what they're claiming. This is important. People tried to copy the device that I use, where they tried to put like an inhalation thing on top of these and say, hey, inhale this gas, it's good for you. And they claim numbers like 300 milliliters per minute, which ironically is, actually, I won't go into that because it's not conspiracy, but I don't want to throw anybody under the bus of who's saying that those numbers are therapeutic.
Yeah.
But you don't want to inhale directly ionized or electrolyzed water. And the Japanese know this, but yet these people didn't think about the details. Again, there's no details. The Japanese are all about the details. Yeah. And one really cool story is this device that I'm using. One of the guys who's in charge of creating it actually has, and I hope the noise is not coming through. Everything's all good.
No, you're great.
Awesome. He has a daughter who is sick. She has ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease. This poor girl. I mean, imagine this guy was told that his daughter would never make it past the age of 5 years of age. And she was getting chronic lung infections like every week. It was terrible. He knew the hydrogen would help. He knew that it would work based on a lot of the data. I mean, he just kind of had a very strong hunch that it would work. So he wanted to build the best home unit in the world. Mm. Now, this means that instead of going for profits, you know, like, hey, let's make the stuff in China, right? It's cheap over there. This guy said, nope, this machine is going to get fully engineered, and it's going to be hand built and lab tested and lab certified, which nobody does, all in Japan. And by the way, that's expensive. It's not cheap to do it all in Japan. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did. And the hydrogen gas that this thing produces and the type of water that it produces was so next level. And you didn't even have to pay $11,000 for the equipment. It's under $2,500, which is extremely cheap in the world of hydrogen. And once you have a device, you can make hydrogen for years and years. It's so cheap in the long term. It's cheaper than, this is actually the most expensive way to do hydrogen is these pills. Right. Yeah. Because you got to, you know, I knew a doctor who was buying them and using them for, he was spending something like, how much was he spending? $500 a month or something crazy for him and his family. It was costing him a small fortune, and he didn't realize the unhealthy aspects, and he was a doctor. And this is my point. You can't, I don't want to say you can't trust doctors, but they're not educated in this stuff in medical school. Right? If you really want to learn about it, you have to go, you know, to the universities. Boy, how's that coming through? That's pretty loud.
Kicking on a little bit.
All right.
But I wanted to take the last like 10 minutes or so to talk about this water technology, because we've talked about hydrogen in detail. We talked about the potential problems of supplements and other pseudo technologies that are out there. I want to talk about the solution with you now.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think it is, again, this is important. Lots of bad information. Everybody wants to jump on the hydrogen wagon too, by the way. So all of a sudden, remember Kangen machines used to be all about the alkaline water?
Yeah, so totally, yeah.
Now all of a sudden they're hydrogen machines.
Oh, really? Right? Oh, interesting.
Oh, this is happening all over the place. It's ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
You know, and so there was I won't even name the machines, but there was like this other machine that supposedly did all this magical stuff with water. Now all of a sudden that same machine's a hydrogen device. Like that's all happening out there. And it's confusing people. And the Japanese, with this new data, because they are the ones that created the Kangen, and they did see certain health benefits at first. The health benefits quickly go away. And then there is data in Japan showing that it's actually detrimental to your health, alkalinizing water through ionization.
Is that because, just real quick on that, the Kangen machine, is it because you're alkalizing the body at first? So it kind of balances out the pH of the blood and whatever inflammatory stuff is going on. But then eventually it becomes too alkaline and drops the stomach acid or whatever. It's just people become kind of they become too alkaline.
Part of that is true.
Okay.
So this is what happened. They tell you something like, "Ooh, alkaline water is the answer." Let me tell you something. If that was the answer, you could take tap water, put baking soda in it, voila, you got alkaline water. Right. That ain't going to fix anything. No offense to anybody, but that's not going to fix arthritis, heart conditions like I had. It's just not going to fix this stuff. Mm-hmm. But they were observing that these machines were having some medical benefit. Okay, it wasn't like revolutionary breakthrough, but there was something there. And they thought it was the pH of the water. What they did not know till later is that those machines were inadvertently making hydrogen. Not the right levels, not the right way to make hydrogen, but it was making some. All
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
And it only made hydrogen for about 3 months. After that, it went down because all the metal plates are inside the machine. You can't keep them, you can't clean them quite right. And so they weren't producing hydrogen the right way either, because they were making the water alkaline, as you were stating. The issue with the alkaline water is that it was disrupting stomach acids. So you got that part right.
Right.
People don't realize that we need stomach acid. It's crucially important. One, to break down your food properly so you can actually absorb the nutrients. I mean, this is one thing that's the function of it. The other aspect of stomach acids that's crucially important is that it can actually potentially kill pathogens so that you don't get them into your GI. So when you start continually putting this alkaline substance, especially if you're eating food. So if you eat food and you drink some Kangen water, you be careful. This is not what you want to be doing. You bring down those stomach acids, it begins to cause certain issues. And that's what they were observing, not only in Japan. I've spoken to many people who use the Kangen for long periods of time. One, it never solved their medical issues. I have a really interesting story about a girl who was a Kangen salesperson. And She never could fix her issues. I got her on the proper hydrogen equipment, proper protocol. It totally fixed her problems. It changed her life because she had these issues for years. And she tried everything. She tried the vegan diet, the raw food diet. She tried everything under the sun. She was hardcore. She wanted this problem resolved.
Yeah.
She really was. So when the Japanese observed this, and they learned hydrogen is actually pH neutral, right? So it shouldn't be making your water alkaline. It's pH neutral. So my contention was I quit listening to everybody else and I started thinking for myself, because everybody's like, no, you want this water. No, you want that water. No, you want Kangen water. No, you want alkaline water. I basically just thought, I want the cleanest water. That's just what I want, right? I want clean water. So I researched I know every filtration modality there is. Ultimately, I recommend a carbon distiller. In fact, I recommend one from a website called mypurewater.com. They're American made, they're high quality, they last forever, and they're not that expensive. In fact, I got a discount code. I don't really care if people use it or not, but if they want a discount, it's the same as my YouTube channel, which is Uprising 144K. So you get this really awesome carbon distiller, and it makes the water so clean, so pure, right? Yes, you have to add some minerals, which is cheap and it's easy, right? And then you put that in your hydrogen generator and you dissolve all this hydrogen into it without changing the pH. You never electrolyze or ionize the water you're consuming. So these is a bad design actually, because it's directly electrolyzing or ionizing the water you're consuming. The device that I use doesn't do that. It's a very unique design where the water's never ionized, never electrolyzed. You're not disrupting the way that it really is. And I have found that that's the best. And when you do that, it's actually good for your stomach. You're not messing around with the pH. If anything, what's the main ingredient in your stomach acids? It looks to me like it's hydrogen.
HCl, the hydrochloric acid. This is like super fascinating. Because as you know, for a lot of people listening, you may not realize with stomach acid or with things like GERD, acid reflux, heartburn, these are all actually a reduction of stomach acid, too low stomach acid, but the medical model will tell you that it's actually the opposite, that you have too much stomach acid, so you have to take these acid blocking medications, which further disturbs your system. And that's just for whatever reason, that was a very fascinating thing for me many years ago studying this stuff. So it's interesting how it's all tying together with hydrogen.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. That's so that's one of the reasons that, well, for one, I've seen that hydrogen has a very good anti-aging effect, and it's fixed so many people's gut issues. I just did a show the other day with a woman who had celiac disease for a long time. Guess what? Hydrogen, it's gone. She's like, this has changed my life, she said. She said, I would eat something by accident. She's like, I have to run to a toilet. You better hope there's a toilet nearby, she said, because, she just gets diarrhea, and hydrogen has totally resolved their problem. So she was so impressed. She's like, how does the world not know about this? I feel the same way. I mean, I've been talking about this for years. I'm like, the world still doesn't know, right? There's a lot of people who don't know the power of hydrogen. It's gonna change the world. I really believe this. It's gonna change the world in so many ways. I don't even want to mention the name of this medicine because I don't want to get you in trouble. It just because it was a medicine that was used for the virus, which I used way before. In fact, it's funny because my channel, I was making videos about this anti-parasitic because I'm really big on deworming. It's interesting what hydrogen,
Yeah.
the effect that it has on parasites, by the way. I found a study on it. Super fascinating. In this particular study, it was showing certain numbers of parasites in the liver using hydrogen. That number went down quite a bit. So it seems to create an inhospitable environment for parasites. So it helps regulate, which is really important.
That's what you want, right? You want a terrain modification versus just like pasteurizing, just pasteurization, just kill, antibiotics. You want to modify the terrain of the inner environment so it's not hospitable towards pathogens.
Absolutely. I mean, and this goes for our blood too, right? Wanting to regulate the pH of the blood, and the body will do just about anything it can to help regulate and keep it in a certain balance. And I found that hydrogen actually helps a massive amount with that. Same story, that girl with the celiac, she says she studies her body's pH, of her blood, because when people say your body's pH, I mean, we have different pHs in different areas, like our gut, for example.
Yeah.
So you can't just say you want your whole body alkaline. It doesn't quite work that way.
No,
You
then
know?
you become, then what ends up happening is you become a, like when people get too deep into like fruitarianism or like green juicing or fasting on the raw food diet, and they become very alkalosis. They become very spacey, very ungrounded, and like nerve sensitivities, and can't interface with other people in just kind of in a grounded way. And that's also an interesting point too, is like a symptom of being too alkaline, being like out of your body.
Yeah. Yeah, I think balance in all things is always important. That's just my opinion.
Of course.
Um, I have observed the Japanese culture a great deal because I mean they live very long. They have the longest life expectancy of any industrialized nation in the world, and there's a lot of wisdom in the way that they do things,
Mhm.
in their lives. And so I've taken a lot of stuff that I can take from from them. For example, have you ever heard of a food called natto?
Yeah, of
Natto.
course. Of course.
That's like one of their number one superfoods in Japan, and they eat it regularly. And yeah, it tastes funny, but eventually, it took me about 3 or 4 years to get used to it, to be honest.
Uh-huh.
But I like it now, and it's a fermented bean,
Right.
and this is so important because yes, I think beans are very good for us, but we usually cook beans, not ferment them.
Mm-hmm.
And what's that other one that looks like tofu? Tempeh. You
Tempeh,
ever heard
yeah.
of tempeh? I
Yeah.
mean, tempeh is amazing for you, and that's fermented bean. You know,
But in
and
America, you have this genetically modified soy tempeh. So
yeah, to me
that's
that's
a
a
little bit
problem.
different.
That is a problem in my opinion.
Yeah,
You definitely don't want. I'm not gonna say all genetically modified food is the same
sure.
because that's also very confusing in my opinion. Because you can breed something to be a certain way, or you can just modify the genes of it.
Right.
Which is in my opinion very different.
Right. I
You
think
know,
that's the difference between genetic engineering and genetic modification, which doesn't sound like it's any different, but there's a little bit of a distinction there.
I think so, and I think those things are important. But I still one of my favorite things about hydrogen is how protective it is. And when
Sure.
I say protective, I mean watch my video number 8 where they expose these cells to a type of like chemotherapy or radiation, and the destruction that happens. And then this particular cells they used hydrogen, and
Mm-hmm.
then they saw the protection where they bombarded it with this chemo, and it had almost no damage. I mean,
Wow.
it's unbelievable. So think about all the damage that's being caused to your body from stuff in your water, stuff in the air, stuff in your food, maybe even the Wi-Fi's or
Mm-hmm.
these different types of microwave
Stress.
signals and
Yeah.
radiation and
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. Even just sitting out in the sun too long, you know.
Sure.
I know the sun's good for us, but it can also be very damaging. And so, or sitting in front of your computer all the time. That's why I like to breathe in this hydrogen because it's so protective, and it's going to change the world of medicine. I mean, just to give you one example, you ever heard of a drug called cisplatin?
No.
So cisplatin is a cancer drug, all right, and it destroys your kidneys. I mean, almost every single time that you use it, you're going to end up needing a kidney transplant, which would suck, right? If you got cancer, now you need new kidneys. They did a study with hydrogen with cisplatin. All of a sudden you got very little kidney damage, and you could actually give this drug that could potentially help people, you know so it's going to open the door. So anybody who's on pharmaceuticals who wants to protect themselves from the damage of what these pharmaceuticals are potentially doing to your body,
Mm-hmm.
people who just want to protect themselves in general, because we know that we are, you remember how the scripture said that the world will become a toxic wasteland? I think we're there.
No,
You
but
know what I
it
mean?
sounds about on point.
Yeah, I think that it is on point. I think that's what we're seeing, and that's part of the reason I named my channel what I did, because
Yeah.
144,000 are like these last survivors in the end of days, and I'm like, who's going to survive? It's going to be people on hydrogen. That's what I was actually really thinking, because
Mm-hmm.
it's that protected. It's literally like having a guardian angel with you. That's literally the first thing I thought when I saw the data, and I thought, man, how is it protecting you like this? It's almost like godlike, you know, protecting ourselves. It's unbelievable. It really is hard to believe.
Greg, this has been a deeply fascinating conversation, and I know that we're only scratching the surface of this. And
Yeah.
you kind of distilled and condensed your body of knowledge into an hour medium for the purpose of the podcast. There's so much more that I know that you have and have shared. So for the audience, how do they find out more about you through either ways to contact you or through your YouTube channel. And then can you tell us also how people can look into the hydrogen technology?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is I don't do Twitter a lot, but I am on Twitter. If people want to find me, I think look for the Hydrogen Man or Hydrogen Man. YouTube is kind of my number one place. I would say, go to YouTube, type in Uprising 144K. You're going to find me. If you type in the Hydrogen Man, you might find me. Not sure. If people just want to get the best equipment, like they're like, hey, I want to start using hydrogen, the best equipment, you find it at holyhydrogen.com. That's where you find that certified device made in Japan, all that good stuff. Holy Hydrogen also has like a bunch, they have some videos too, which are pretty good, very educational. And then they have all these scientific studies there, so you can actually read legitimate data, which in my opinion is important. I do recommend, you don't have to do it. Obviously, I don't give medical advice, but I do recommend if you're going to get a hydrogen machine, try to use the cleanest water. I mean, maybe you already have a reverse osmosis or carbon filtration, but and I won't go into the stories right now because we don't have time, but I would say carbon distiller, cleanest water, very, very important to get the most out of hydrogen. And if people want to contact me, they can. I have an email. It's called uprising144k, just the same as my YouTube channel, at gmail.com. And so you guys can, email me there if you want to. They're also welcome to contact the company, because people contact me with questions about the device. I'm like, hey, call the company. That's what they're there for. That's what they do. I mean, people can ask me questions too, but the company is obviously there for a reason. So they handle all that part. I'm just a fan, really. I love what they've created. And yeah,
Beautiful.
that's what I would say to answer those questions.
Okay. Well, Greg, thank you so much for taking the time and joining me here. And yeah,
I forget. I did forget to give a discount code. And again, I don't care if people use it or not, but if they want a discount on the hydrogen machine, you have to put it all in capital letters, the name of my channel, Uprising 144K, and that does get them a discount if people want one.
Okay. Beautiful. Thanks for joining me, Greg.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.